Hello, personal productivity enthusiasts and community. Welcome to Anything But Idle, the Productivity News Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith,
And I'm Augusto Pinaud.
and we're your hosts for Anything But Idle. This is episode 92092 for January 3rd, 2022, and I got the year right. And today's show is LastPass is going to become an independent company, and so welcome everybody. Happy New Year. And of course, as you know, each week, Augusto and I read and review and then discuss the productivity and technology news headlines of the week. And so with that, let's get started with our personal productivity blogosphere and audiosphere articles. Augusto, what's our first article this week?
So the first article is from Fast Company and it's titled Want to Be Happier. And science says buying a little time leads to significant greater satisfaction. And the article begins quoting John Maynard Keynes, who was the economist who said in the 1930s that with the evolution of technology and everything else, he predicted that people was going to be working 3 hours a week, and that the problem was going to be that people was going to be bored and they were not going to know what to do with that. I don't
And
think
boy,
Tim
was he
Ferriss.
wrong.
I don't think Tim Ferriss even said 4 hour work week. I don't even think he even aimed to the 3 hours. Well, where we went wrong was that with that extra opportunities and extra incomes, we went and opened the extra expenses too. As simple as that. When I think as a parent on the opportunities and the things my kids have versus the things that we had growing up, there is no comparison. Even on the space, I don't have the information in front of me, but I remember reading a study how much the average startup home has grown and grown and grown over the years. And I think that's part of the problem. I don't think Keynes was wrong. It's just he did not contemplate that with that number of opportunities and more income, people was going to just try to get more and more and more. And that's part of where things has gone wrong. But the problem is all those more money, more things has not brought any happiness for many people. And that has bring movements, as minimalism and people existentialism and people trying to, okay, let's get ourselves for a moment out of the rat wheel and evaluate really why we are doing this and what is what we're trying to accomplish and see if we can go somewhere. And at the end of the day, are do I think people will ever be able to work 3 hours a week? No, regardless what technology do. There is something, at least on the American culture, about working and the pride we have for work, for good or for bad. I shared this story when I was writing iPad only with my dear friend Michael Slowinski. Okay, and he needed to stop in the middle of that writing to take a siesta. Okay, and over the years, still working with now as a coach from people from Spain. Okay, I make sure that those appointments never hit close to that because I still don't understand it. Okay, that we are in the middle of a meeting. No, let's stop the meeting and go for the siesta. No, let's finish the meeting. Nope. So I don't think I don't think every culture is wired for that. But what I think is that we have let consumerism take over many people and take over what people want and try to accomplish. And until that getting somehow of control, we are not going to see a reduce on anything.
Yeah, my only thought here regarding this article was that it did a really good job of explaining that if you buy time, basically, delegating or having tasks done for you that would otherwise take up your time, that don't provide you with real value, then there is some little bump in gain. I don't like the word happiness. There are about a dozen different words for positive affects, positive emotions, and so whether that be joy or contentment or whatever the various positive affect is, we know that there are things that we can buy to do that. I don't want to clean my house, so if I have someone clean my house, that time spent doing something I enjoy is fulfilling to me, is going to be money well spent to displace me having to take time to do a mundane task like cleaning, the house. So these are the things that we can spend money on to basically, quote unquote, buy time. And I think the article does a pretty good job of explaining that component. On to our next article this week.
So our next article is from 2 Minute Rule, and it's about micro resolutions, and I think it's incredibly timely as people is beginning. I don't know if it's the gyms, I'm going to assume, are packed again, and people cannot park. My daughter compete uh, she swims competitively, so January is the moment where you try to pick her up or drop her for do her swimming practice, and you can park, and it's kind of annoying. By February 1st is fine again, but January tend to be a complicated month. But it was interesting as we went to the end of the year, and I was asking people what is for next year. And this is the first time that I found more people, at least the people I had surrounding me, saying, I'm not making any. And I have forwarded these micro resolution articles to a lot of people and say, fine, don't do any, but don't think on the big one, but look on the small ones. And what the article goes is that don't necessarily need save the world, but what are going to be the mini things? And you talk in this article about how 3 years ago or 4 years ago, whenever this was written, 2021, 3 years ago, how you had write every day, okay, and you start your year in November, and every year you start in November. I tend to do cycles of 13 weeks. Okay, what's going to happen in the next 13 weeks? That is a different way to look at these micro resolutions, but it's easier to make the goal smaller, where you can see how you can influence towards that goal, than try to go, okay, let's do 200 pounds. And I have to share my story here. I begin in 2010, 2010, okay, with 400 pounds, and I'm now 182. But it wasn't, if I will have said at that time, let's lose 200 plus pounds, that may have never happened. The goal was to lose a pound, and then I went to 5, and I went to 10. That is exactly what this article goes. Make micro resolutions. Start them when you start them. Just mark when you are starting them and move forward.
Well, I didn't expect you to actually put this article in the rundown, but but hopefully it's useful for folks. I actually only wrote this last week. I didn't write this 3 years ago. This is actually a timely resolution for me, a micro resolution that I've created to write daily, and I'm really looking forward to it. And then checking back in with myself at the end of January to do this. So if anybody wants to join us in the micro resolutions kind of space here, check out the article and create a micro resolution and kind of let us know what's going on. You can post in Personal Productivity Club. You can comment on the video wherever you might find it. So next up in our articles this week, Augusto.
So the next one is from Darius Farooq, and the article, if you're not skipping some task, you're making life harder. And how many times have we let a task derail all our productivity?
Never.
Never.
Never, sir. Never.
And I was sharing the pre-show, that was exactly how my day started. Okay, I went to do something, and the system crashed and collapsed. And well, there was all that I was planned for today, and there was 2 ways to do it. I could have fight that, or I could have sit and replan and restructure the day. that was actually what happened. So in my case, I have learned, and I'm more successful than not, to recalibrate and to skip the task. Hey, there are moments that no, there is not the moment to write that letter or send that email, even that is the appropriate next action. But there are moments that you know that the brain is not there. Don't do it. Skip the task, move to the next one, and then come back.
Yeah, and there are times when skipping a task doesn't mean that you're not going to do it. It's just not in the sequence that you had planned for it to be done. I sometimes have this, the spirit moves me, so to speak, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do this writing now, and I'm going to do all the writing I need to for this project, and then I'll double back and I'll do the intermediary administrative ministerial tasks of where those writing pieces need to go. Frequently, I'm writing for webinars, descriptions for webinars, and I'm writing descriptions for presentations and all kinds of other things. And I'll just get locked into the idea of, okay, I've got to post this item now and then come back and then do the next one. And it's like the breaking the creative capacity of output is too much. It's too much there for me. So I'll skip the checklist and I'll say, okay, I'm just going to write all 5 of these upcoming descriptions at once. And then I'll go back and I'll fix the pieces up and then put them in the right places and so on and so forth. But if you're not skipping them, you have to, you get yourself kind of tossed around. And so, sometimes it's that kind of thing as well, where you're not skipping it totally. You're just skipping it temporarily so that you can be more productive in more efficient and not lose a flow state, so to speak. So it's kind of one of those things. All right, on to our next article this week.
We come back to Fast Company, but it's the story of Zebra and how Zebra went to rent a 43,000 square foot to go fully remote, and the stories. And what I like about the article is you could read at least a certain level vulnerability from the CEO and what they did well, why they did wrong, why forced fun didn't work, but instead how the value of a 15-minute Zoom call was really good. And as we are into this transition, and we don't know now which direction we are going in this transition, because as 3 weeks ago we thought we were moving forward, as of today apparently we are moving backwards again. But this is the reality. We are going to be dealing with this, and as leaders of the organization, it is important to understand what others are doing well, what others haven't worked for others, and what we are going to do with our organizations. And I thought this article was a really good thing to show what worked for them and maybe grab 1 or 2 ideas.
Absolutely. I think that, ultimately this pandemic will end. It's not if, but when. So I'm hopeful, and I am aware that the experts, the scientists have told us that this will end. And so I trust that. The fact of the matter is that we'll go from pandemic to endemic, and that's just purely because SARS-CoV-2 is not going away. We are just going to manage it better. And
Right.
that fundamentally changes the way in which we work. So this concept of let's call it remote work or hybrid work or just work in the future. Once we lose the modifications, the modifiers of remote and hybrid and in-person work, it's just going to become work, and people are going to become very comfortable with the idea that they work in whatever environment they want to, that's best for them, and that's not necessarily the case for everybody. And we got to keep aware that some people will always have to work in person in their place, and in their place of business. So that's the reality. But as we do this, we should be looking to all of these various examples of people testing the waters, and the 4-day work week companies, and these companies that are going fully remote, and those that are trying hybrid options. This is really good experimentation for us all to look and see, and then take, as you said, Augusto, taking from it what is good, using those pieces for your own organizations. So I just really enjoy reading these articles because it really helps you get some level of perspective. And so, as I said, some companies are trying 4-day work weeks, and on to our next story about one such company.
Yeah, and the company is up level, and they make software tools to help engineering teams manage and measure how the developers are using their time. And they're, according to the article, at least trying their own dog food. So they are going to a 4-day work week. And they're sharing again what is working, what is not working. It's not perfect, but let's clarify, it wasn't perfect in 2018 either. It doesn't matter what you wear before all this pandemic, it wasn't perfect. But all these adjustments are important, and see how your employees are embracing the change and how you are as an organization are helping them to embracing that change. How can you make your process work better in a world where the person may not come back to the office to get their problem solved? You may need to figure it out how you are going to solve that now in a machine that you cannot access because your security protocols don't allow that person to go out and don't allow you as an IT team to go in. So those are problems that in a way are new. The solution was grab the laptop, go to the office, see IT. Well, if that solution is not available anymore, what's happened? And this is going to bring, I think, a lot of innovation, process improvement, and it is going to be really, really good.
Yeah, I think the 4-day work week is a very interesting concept across the board. I wish that I could. I wish that I could see myself doing a 4-day work week. I think that I want to do it for my staff. I really do. I just don't see myself being able to do it because I still suffer sometimes, on occasion, maybe all the time, from workaholism. And so I know that I like the idea of having this, and I've actually thought about maybe taking midweek off, right? So taking maybe a Wednesday off in the middle of the week, and then working Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then maybe a little bit on Saturday, just because that ends up being when I meet with some of my clients because they can't meet with me during the work week, and so it just ends up working out that way. But the way in which these companies are testing the waters with 4-day work weeks, I think is really, an innovation in many different ways. And we know that it can work for some companies, and certainly for some companies of even very large sizes can do this very effectively. Notably, Microsoft Japan tried this and had a really big jump in their own productivity when they did this. So again, I just think we need to be testing the waters and seeing how these things work out, and then reporting back what works and what doesn't work when we do try out these different types of working, let's call it modalities, right? Whether that be reducing hours throughout the workday, reducing the number of workdays altogether, and also providing flexibility for workers in terms of working remotely, hybrid, or in person when they want to and need to. And again, this is an employee's market, right? The article even noted that, right? That we're in this position where if you don't want to work for this company, you have a great chance of leaving them and going someplace else and getting what you want. So companies are having to respond to that by going ahead and appeasing their workers. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that, there needs to be a balance, a partnership between the employee market and the employer market. And right now it was highly imbalanced toward one side, and employees now have gotten a little bit of power, and they are using that for, I think, the betterment of the entire employee market. So hopefully that works out to ultimately bring us back to center, right? It's good to be in the center in that space where employees and employees are bargaining on equal footing. And I think that's a good thing. So with that, we have reached the middle of our episode time, so to speak. We're going to take a break for a word from our sponsor, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club. When we get back, we will then cover our tech headlines of the week, our featured story of the week, and our productivity resources. So we will see you after the break.
While working in person may be normal for you, it's unlikely your coworkers are as interested in being productive as you are. Or working remotely or from home can be isolating. And there's something powerful about being with productive people, even virtually, that helps you be more engaged. If a flavor of these sounds familiar, Co-working Space by Personal Productivity Club is for you. Co-working Space is a virtual work community designed to help members be more effective and efficient in their work and personal lives. At its core, we provide goal tracking and host focused action sessions throughout the week for accountability and camaraderie. Visit anythingbutidle.com/coworking to learn more. Co-working Space lives inside Personal Productivity Club, a digital community for personal productivity enthusiasts, so you can find people who use methods and tools you do too. Again, head over to anythingbutidle.com/coworking to see how co-working space can help you be more productive. And now, back to our show.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anything But Idle. I'm Ray Sidney-Smith, joined with Augusto Pinaud for the second half of the show. We're going to head into our technology headlines of the week. Augusto, what's our first technology headline this week?
So LastPass has a scare. We have talked about LastPass here. LastPass is a password management, but there was a scare. There was an email that's saying, hey, we may have or may not have unauthorized login information, and it was not clear. It was serious. So the good news is LastPass says that no passwords were compromised on the breach scare, and there was nothing breaking, nothing good. So as of last week, they are saying it's good. It was most a trigger error due to an issue that LastPass has resolved, but there was no compromised password. That is a really good news.
Yes, we are a LastPass house and a LastPass business, so I was very keen to make sure that this was not. It turns out that it was just an errant email that went out. There were no passwords that were compromised, no master passwords that were compromised. It was just an error in their email system. So not great.
I live in one password, but it still was scary.
Of course, it's always scary, and still LastPass or any other password manager worth its weight is so much better than keeping your passwords in a plain text document or an Excel spreadsheet on your computer. So
what do you mean the post-it under the laptop is not secure?
No, sir. All right, on to our next story. We've got some Google news.
The next story is exciting. Google Drive is converting all the messy duplicate files into shortcuts. Not that my Google Docs is any mess at all. It's completely organized. But this is really, really exciting. The people some of the companies leave, and some of my clients leave in Google Drive. It is awesome to know that now their files are not going to be duplicated all over, and what is now the real truth, but are going to be turned into shortcuts. So you are also going to be able now to put shortcuts in multiple places, and that, I think, it's an incredible move from Google, and I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, so Google Drive shortcuts have been a thing for quite a long time. So you've had the ability to create shortcuts. What happens right now, and just so that you're all aware, is that Google is not deleting your primary file. Your original file is going to stay there. But if you were to copy that file and place it into a bunch of different places, literally the same exact file in a bunch of different places, Google is going to take those files and is going to swap them out for a Google Drive shortcut. And you'll know that it's a shortcut because you'll see the Google Drive icon, whether it's Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, what have you. It'll have a little arrow in the corner of it. And that's just telling you that it's pointing to a file that's someplace else. Okay. And what they're trying to do is just reduce your overall Google Drive storage usage. And so this, of course, is self-serving, right? Because it benefits them, because the less they have to store, the more money they're going to make, right? So they're streamlining in some way, shape, or form. And I give the CFO at Google great credit for thinking this through, or maybe it was Google Cloud. I'm not quite sure which part of Google or Alphabet, thought this up, but it's a good thing overall. I've seen a reduction in my own Google Drive storage size just based on this one change. So just know that you will have an original file. It's not going to delete those original files. It's just going to swap out the duplicates with that little shortcut. Okay. On to our next story.
Well, I think it was appropriate at the beginning of the year to talk about Google Play's best for 2021. I don't have a Google device, but you do. Did you use any of these applications? That you go for the user choice, the Paramount Plus movie for games. And games, I know I don't have a chance, but with you. But Balance may be something that you play. I don't see you playing Pokemon. I don't know. I may be wrong into that one.
No, I don't. But I did play with some of these applications. Remarkably, I didn't know about a lot of them. When I was reviewing the list for 2021, I thought, wow, that's a really interesting group of lists. But what was most interesting is that the best for Wear, which is Wear OS, the operating system for the smartwatches, it noted that Calm. CALM, Calm, the app, was the best app voted on Wear OS, MyFitnessPal, and Sleep Cycle, all three applications of which I use, but none of them on my Wear OS watch. So very interesting. But I use them all on the Android operating system, but I just don't use them on the watch. And then the rest of these, the answer's no. I did just buy a Google Stadia set of controllers because we're an entire Google household. So I have the Android TV now, Google TV, which was an NVIDIA Shield product, the latest version we had just set up on the television. We have the Stadia controllers, and I just wanted to kind of see what Stadia was all about. Stadia is Google's streaming gaming platform, and so you don't have a console. You just basically utilize the technology in your smart TV or in your laptops, tablets, and phone, and the controller connects to those. I have to say it's been a little bit clunky. I don't think that it's going to be less clunky on Amazon's Luna or on Xbox XPass or any of the other platforms that are out there, but I will say that the overall experience has been fairly positive with regard to what they've done, considering that they're Google and they're not a big gaming studio producing, amazing games and that kind of thing. So I'm interested to see where the gaming platform goes, because, I have nieces and nephews, and, when they come over, I want to be able to be the, not cool uncle, but I want to be at least not the stodgy old uncle who doesn't want to play games with them. So this is a good kind of lesson for me in getting geared up for that. But yeah, otherwise, I have to admit, none of the games jumped out at me as being anything that I knew, and only the Wear OS applications were ones that I've actually utilized outside of Canva. Canva I have used on the tablet, which was one of them. And if anyone doesn't know, Canva is a design software that's built into the web, and so you can use the mobile applications as well as the web app, and it's phenomenal. I just really love Canva, and it's a great tool.
And using Canva as a jump for the next article, that obviously is the Apple list. Canva also make it for the list on the Apple, and Apple, get the game of the year, the app of the year. The app of the year, I have not used it. I write it down, so I test it. It's called Talk Alive World, but I haven't touched, at least on the iPhone. But LumaFusion I have, and it's great. And on the games, I wonder if that mist was that same mist that I may or may have not invest significant amount of hours in another life. I will be really afraid to download. But what was interesting in this article was what Apple or the writers for Apple Insider were talking about the trend of the year. And the trend of the year, according with them, was connection. And they bring Bumble, they bring Canva, they bring Among Us as the important things to acknowledge on that connection and how to make it right and how to make it better. So that was
Have you played Among Us?
I have played Among Us.
Okay. I have not. But I've heard about it, obviously, but I haven't played.
I have. It's really unfair. I don't have enough time to practice, and I play with my two kids. My two nephews and niece. My two nephews, and I had no chance. I mean, they were moving in a speed that I required to stop working and play, so I can really challenge them, and I'm not.
Yeah, well, back to the Google Stadia controller. It has like a bazillion buttons. I just don't like. There's like piano practice for years. I'm very proficient in typing in QWERTY keyboard and Dvorak as well as Colmac keyboard layouts, and yet I sat with that Stadia controller and I just thought to myself, how does anybody productive using this thing? I couldn't quite get all the anyway.
It's all about Zen gaming.
On to our next article.
Our next article is one that I am particularly excited, and is Shift Playgrounds 4.0. It's coming to the iPad. Apple released Shift Playgrounds, I don't know, 3 years ago. And it was thought, or that's what we thought, initially as a platform to teach the basics of coding. And now with 4.0, they are finally bringing for you to start creating the apps and getting more serious into this and showing for the first time the possibilities of really using the iPad as a coding machine. The iPad has moved from where it was to a really powerful machine. Even it's more powerful than the Mac. I think my iPad Pro is the most powerful machine in my desk. And now finally Apple is bringing the tools, again, eating their own dog food, and giving those developers the ability to make that iPad their main programming platform. And that is really exciting.
Yeah, so just for clarity for everyone, Swift itself is a programming language for the iOS, iPadOS, macOS, tvOS, and watchOS platforms. So this is Apple's kind of solution for writing in that coding in that space. And so the concept of Swift Playgrounds 4.0 is giving you the capability of building in this kind of rich environment, kind of giving power to the people in essence to be able to build for it. It's kind of what Flutter is for everybody else. And so Flutter, of course, also has the ability to push out Mac code, Mac OS code, Linux code, Chrome OS code, and that kind of thing. But Flutter is an open source framework that was developed by Google for being able to code multi-platform. And I've been playing with Flutter on my Raspberry Pi 400. For those of you who recall, I bought a Raspberry Pi 400 last year, and I've been learning to code and learning to code again because I've tried a couple times and failed, faltered, and kind of going back and forth. But I think it's good for me in my being in the technology space and teaching technology. It's always good for me to know kind of what's going on under the hood. And Flutter has been a really great program for that. I do a lot more in the Java, in the JavaScript space and HTML and CSS, but the coding part has always been a challenge for me. I'm really interested and excited about Swift's Playground. I think this is a Swift Playgrounds. I think this is a really interesting concept of being able to push an app into the App Store in a way that is kind of fluid for people, being able to use the Swift UI and kind of getting yourself started there. So yeah, going from being like a kid's playground app to being something that's really this full-fledged is pretty amazing. So I'm excited. I'm pretty excited to play around with it. Okay, onward to our next story.
Well, our next, we have talked many times about e-ink, and something interesting happened in the end of last year. And I have seen two people that may not sound a lot, but two people that are not exactly my tech friends, okay, are my friends who are non-tech, okay, getting e-ink and getting, one got a box, the other one got the super name is escaping me, that is basically a whole tablet with e-ink on Android base. The name is escaping me right now. But e-ink, people is starting to see e-ink. And this article was really cool to see. I remember when I got the Pebble, who was the smart watch with e-ink. It was a beautiful device. But they are bringing here 5, implementations. A beer fermentator, a 32-inch newspaper. That sounds really fantastic. The open source dashboard, and we have seen Amazon doing this and others bringing now the center in the kitchen, and where put all this information and the calendars and the events and the weather. And the other one, it's a do-it-yourself and do an e-paper that you can send messages, basically an Internet of Things e-ink messenger board. So e-ink, and a lot of people have used it, Kindles and Nooks and many other devices who have the e-ink. But I think finally it's getting ahead of the game to more the common user. Even last year, we talked about a monitor that was e-ink, as a big size monitor for the computer. So this may be an incredible change for what is coming. We know e-ink, it's already even in color, and we cover a device And I remember when we talk about it and say, well, why comics? I mean, it is already amazing to be able to read comics in the Kindle. So bring those comics into color. It will be simply incredible. So that's what we have today.
Fantastic. All right, we're moving right along to our business and finance segment. Just to make quick mention of any of our news stories that relate to kind of the business and finance space in the productivity space. I think this is an interesting area for us to follow and to report to you all on and what we find. And just a quick note that Asana, which is Asana Inc., the company behind the task and project management software, they reported a Q3 loss, which is not that big of a deal, in the grand scheme of things. And Airtable got an $11 billion valuation in their last funding, which is pretty amazing. And good on Airtable. I know that who was it that it's escaping me now, but there was somebody who came in at like a $40 billion valuation this year it was Canva, which is a Australian based company. In their last funding round, they came up as a $40 billion company in their last valuation, which is just phenomenal in that sense. But it's good for us to kind of pay attention to the fact that these productivity software are also big companies. Trello owned by Atlassian, and they're a large, stock market traded corporation, right? And there is something important to be understood about the money behind these software products that we're using and that are embedded inside of our personal productivity systems. So we'll continue to keep reporting on this as we come across new business and finance news. All right, on to our productivity resources of the week. As you all know, Augusto and I come across many personal productivity tools, apps, and services in our everyday productivity journeys. And so we like to share those with you when we come across them. And so each week we choose one and we show them to you. This week we have one each as usual. And the first one is a tool that I recently came across. I had no idea it existed, and I am so glad that I found it. It is basically an overlay application for Google Tasks. And so I'm going to bring it up here so you can see it. It is called Tasks Board, and Tasks Board is a desktop app for Google Tasks. Now, I would say that desktop app is probably a little bit of a misnomer because it basically is a PWA, so it's not truly a desktop application, but it gives you a desktop app feel. But it is pretty amazing. I'm very impressed with what I have seen with regard to it. So in just the free version, it gives you the ability to go ahead and log into your Google account. It accesses your Google Tasks and then gives you a Kanban board to be able to kind of materialize things, kind of like what Kanban Note does for Evernote. This Tasks board does for Google Tasks. And so you're capable of organizing things, sharing those Google Tasks lists in real time with your team via a link. And as many of you may know who use Google Tasks, you're kind of stuck in that sidebar in either Google Calendar or inside of Gmail or otherwise. You're kind of locked into that space. Now, there is a link you can use to go ahead and make it a full screen list, but it's just basically a static list. Tasks board takes that to another step and brings you this fluid interface in order to be able to do it. I've been pretty impressed with it, and synchronizes across all your devices, of course, because it's using Google Tasks. So it's just basically synchronizing your account. If you go to the premium version, then you get even more power. Now, I have not done this yet. I just haven't had the time to play around with it. But the premium version gives you unlimited list sharing, so you can share as many lists as you want. So uncapping the free version's lists, you can create rules and then label those particular items in the board. So you can actually color and label them. You can put your own custom background behind your board, kind of like Trello, where you can put an image behind the board so you can kind of customize it in that sense. You can set focus colors to specific lists. So this left-hand side bar becomes a colored space that you can create. And you know how I love coloring things. And you can have multiple boards. So you can have multiple projects and that kind of thing, and then share those boards with your team. So very, very cool tool. If you are kind of inculcated in the Google Tasks space, if you use Google Workspace for business and you want to be able to utilize Google Tasks in a more fluid work environment, both for personal system as well as for organizational systems, I think Task Board is a pretty easy transition, it looks like it's if you want to go to the premium, it's only $3.30 per month. So altogether, you're talking about $36 US, about that amount per year. So it's a pretty easy fee to be able to then go ahead and utilize it. So I was unaware of it and really, really impressed by it once I did kind of poke under the hood. Augusto, what's your productivity resource this week?
So my toy of the week, my productivity thing of the week is called the Muse. And I got the Muse to Santa brought it to me. And basically the Muse has a sensors, has a heart measure sensor, can do an EKG, can do some breathing, but basically it's designed so you measure your brain as you are meditating. And I tend to consider that my meditations are not that great. And apparently to this application, they're much better than what I thought. But the feedback is great. You can put your headphones, and the feedback is live. So as you get more calm, the music will come and be calmer. You can even hear some birds when you get to certain levels. As you get agitated, the feedback will get agitated. The brain, the wind, the sea, or whatever you pick. You can also, on the premium version, use your own meditation if you want, and they just still measure. What has given to me one is a way to measure that I like. I think what you measure, you can improve. So it basically measure 4 things: measure your mind, their EKG, your body. That one is the one I fail, but terribly. And the other one is your breath. If you are looking into improving meditation, and I believe meditation is one of those tools that can be interesting, this is a fantastic way to do it. It will give you the statistics on what you have done, how well you have done, and all that.
Fantastic. I know that I've been looking at the option of getting something like the Muse 2 for some time, and I think you've just pushed me over the edge to hit go on that.
I honestly, this has been on my list for a while too, and I wasn't sure it was worth it. Okay, I didn't want to invest whatever amount of money was, almost $200. So I wasn't sure.
$250 USD. So it's $250 USD.
Yeah, $250 was on promotion. But I'm going to say that I should have gotten much early. It is really, really good. And at least right now, as the hot toy, I've been even meditating maybe more than what I normally do, because I want to see the numbers and the graphs.
Yeah, see, I've been a 20+ year meditator, so I don't particularly need this. I just want it. So because like you, I'm a data hound, right? So I think I'm probably more than you. I am actually
you are much more than me.
Yeah, I'm a quantified selfer. So I love tracking data about myself, and so the ability to be able to track this information, I think, is very, very powerful. And like even with my watch, it's not capturing that level of detail coming from my own brain waves. And so if I can track that, that'd be really, really amazing. Plus, it also gives me the ability to test against Brain.fm and other tools. Brain.fm doesn't do this, but there are tools that do binaural beats, and it helps you to basically change your brain wave frequencies. And so the Brain.fm technology and utilizing something like a binaural beats generator in confluence with the Muse to be able to track that data, I think is just really brilliant. And I'd love to see it.
It's really, really geeky. Be careful.
All right, on to our featured story of the week. What are we talking about this week, Augusto?
Well, LastPass is going to become an independent company. So LastPass was acquired by LogMeIn. That's what it was. And now LogMeIn was 125 million in 2015. And now they are looking to spin them off, make them their own company. LastPass has more than 30 million users. At least that's what they claim. And I think it's right. I think that will make the company move much faster and develop more specific and better for their platform. So I think that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about this, I think it's going to make LastPass more nimble. That's going to be a good thing all across the board. I think that being inside of LogMeIn has given them potentially a bit of, I don't know, I don't want to say it's not negative press that they've gotten for it, but it certainly hasn't been positive for them when they were purchased, because people were very concerned about the future of LastPass when they were consumed by the larger entity. Ultimately, I think LogMeIn did a great job of stewarding LastPass as an independent company within the
Mhm.
larger umbrella, and now they're spinning them off again. And I think it's because LogMeIn just really has its own ethos, right? And so that ethos is important to the people like me who use the program every day and want to make sure that it stays on that path. And I think that there's probably some conflict inside of LogMeIn, because LogMeIn probably wants to understand data about its users and wants to do those kinds of things that LastPass inherently is not going to do, because
Correct.
my data is encrypted. It's a blob inside of their database. And so I think that part is probably a little bit of the reason for, LogMeIn saying, we can just, spit LastPass out. It's viable and sustainable on its own, and it's not giving us any greater value by being a part of the family of LogMeIn products. So I think that's really interesting. Now, I would love to see LastPass innovate in their UI and UX. I have to say, when I do a lot of work with clients who use 1Password, and every time I help a client through a 1Password implementation, I'm like, wow, 1Password is just so nice. It's seamless, and the experience is so much nicer. And LastPass works. I mean, I don't have any problems with LastPass. I know how to use it. I know its deficits, so I use it quite well. But to say that it's a perfect experience, the way in which 1Password is just not it, right? It's just not there yet. And I would love to see LastPass fix those pieces so that when you are doing just basic things, the fluidity of the experience and the way in which you implement LastPass is just more seamless. So that's the part that I'd love to see LastPass do as they come out of their, kind of larger conglomerate into their own company, and we'll see what happens from there. I'm curious what you think will impact people's personal productivity systems with LastPass kind of being birthed out of LogMeIn now. Do you think that there's any impact that we need to think about in terms of them being an independent company?
No, actually, I think one of the great things that they went to log me in, sorry, is now they experience what a larger company do, and I'm sure they pick some better practices. And I'm not saying they were bad in any way, shape, or form, but it is a different game when you code as they were, and now you go to log me in. Now going out, I think they are going with a much powerful tool shed than what they have when they were acquired. And I think that's going to be great and more productive for everybody.
Yeah, I know that they've gotten, some slack for, reducing their free tier and increasing their pricing and so on and so forth. I think that's really the only impact on users that are of a negative sort, other than the fact that they need to be a viable company. So I don't I don't mind paying them for me to have solid service. I mean, look at what 1Password is doing, or Dashlane, or those others.
Yeah.
They've charged upfront for the longest time, and they produce really great, beautiful operating software. And when it comes to your security, you really want that. You want your password security to be of a high level. And it's unfortunate that we even have to worry about this in our world, but our personal productivity systems need to be founded on having a strong password manager related to it. It's fundamental to the way in which I operate, and it makes it so much easier once you do get yourself into 1Password or into LastPass or otherwise. I will note here that one of the things that I find LastPass has done really well is the ability to change passwords. So it has these facilitated processes built into the software that if you want to change your Facebook password or those kinds of things, you can actually go into the software and say, I want to change these 5 passwords. And it just helps you through that whole process very, very quickly and easily. And so I like some of the things they're doing there where they're innovating. And I hope they do more of that as they spin out into their own company and really push the envelope of what you can do with a password manager, not just with two-factor authentication or the what does Google call it, two-step verification. Like we need to see more innovation in that space so it becomes less onerous for me as a password user to have to manage my passwords, right? Password management should make my life easier. And I really hope that they do that process. They really help us make managing our passwords easier and more fluid over time, especially in that initial stage, right? You go from maybe you managed your passwords in your Google Chrome or in your Apple Safari, in your Apple Keychain, and you want to get beyond that into a better password management system. Then they should help you through that process. They should really create a better facilitation for that process, and I hope that they do. All right, Augusto, I think that brings us to the end of the show, unless we have any announcements.
We do not have announcements this week, but we have, because we did some break during the month of December, we have a lot of articles on our notes. So when these get posted, you can go to Anything But Idle and you will find there's a significant amount of articles in there.
Awesome. And so with that, we've covered the productivity and related technology news for this week. Thanks to Augusto Pinaud for putting together the show this and every week. Thank you, Augusto.
It's my pleasure.
And we will see you next week. That being the case, on anythingbutidle.com, as Augusto noted, you'll find our show notes. The show notes contain links to all the stories, our productivity resources of the week, the extra stories that he discussed that we didn't get to cover during this episode, as well as text transcripts, both in a reading format, one that you can click read more on the page and it'll expand there so you can read it right along while you're listening. And there's also a PDF download. Click on the PDF download link below the read more link, and that'll download a PDF to your local system for taking offline, for listening offline, and so on and so forth. After reviewing the show notes, please let us know if there's a story we missed. You can leave a comment. You can tweet or DM us at anythingbutidle on Twitter, and you can also use our contact form on the website. So if you go to anythingbutidle.com, click on contact, and you'll be able to fill out the form and send us a message. If you have a question or a comment about anything we've discussed during this show, you can do the same. And as well, we do have a community, a group inside of Personal Productivity Club called Anything But Idle. It's completely dedicated to the podcast and to you all who are listening to the podcast. So feel free to head over to anythingbutidle.com/community, and you will be able to go ahead and join the Anything But Idle group there. So that's on your screen as well, anythingbutidle.com/community. And so join us and post news stories, whatever you want as well. If this is your first time watching the live stream, feel free to click the subscribe button so you get notified when we go live weekly. And we go live weekly, typically Mondays at 6 p.m. Eastern US. But if you're listening to the podcast, feel free to also add us to your favorite podcast app, whether that's subscribing or following or otherwise. There are instructions on anythingbutidle.com for following or subscribing to the podcast. It's free. You can go up there and figure out how to do that on the instructions there. If you have enjoyed spending time watching or listening to us today, feel free to leave a rating or review in Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Pandora, wherever you listen to your podcast that allows you to leave ratings and reviews. Your compliments really help us reach more personal productivity listeners, and thank you to those who have rated us and reviewed us, and thank you to those who will in the future. And so with that, we will see you all next time on Anything But Idle. Here's to your productive life.
Thank you.